Hi, everybody. So we've got a complicated topic to explain it. It's hard to understand what the shape of us means. Should there be a shape of us? Are there shapes of us? So let me kick it off with Santosh, sort of starting from that side. I'll ask all of my three panelists to just think about what does the topic mean to them and what is going on and why would BLF pick this topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's an open-ended topic. I mean, I'm not sure if there is a definite shape to us or there can be a definite shape to us. But I do think that there is a certain process, perhaps, which results in some kind of shapes. I think that, to my mind, the central interaction in India that is taking place is what I would characterize as a metaphor is an interaction between the sediment and the flow. To me, sediment is the kind of the rooted societal grammar, the almost invisible set of rules, structures, hierarchies, priorities that operate and make India work in an invisible way. This is the kind of the choices that we make. These are in a lot of invisible ways how say for instance caste gets organized, how social organizations, social norms play out in India. And then there is flow, which are the forces of change. The forces of change are several. There are institutional forces of change. There is government, there is policy, there is politics as a force of change. There is the bureaucracy as a force of change. There is media, judiciary, there is education, there is technology. All of these are forces of change. What I do think that if I was to look at the shape of us today, perhaps what has happened is a lot of these forces of change have themselves got kind of, if you like, you think of the metaphor of sediment and flow of water, that water itself has got silted with society. So instead of transforming society, it becomes, in fact, in some ways, an accelerant of society. Let me illustrate what I'm saying, because it's slightly abstract. Politics was meant to transform society. I think substantially society has transformed politics. If you were to look at the judiciary today, I find a lot of judgments being rooted in communitarian logic rather than in principles of jurisprudence. If you were to look at media, of course, the less said the better, because it has become an instrument of politics, which is an instrument of society. You look at the debates today, political debates of the day are rooted in symbolic ideas to do with religion, to do with a lot of ideas that are rooted in society. And education, again, we are beginning to see sort of an ideological kind of a slant to education. Perhaps the only force that you could say comes from the outside truly is technology. But my thesis is the fact that what technology has done is to improve the life of individuals substantially and change individual life substantially while keeping the collective ethos largely the same. And therefore, to my mind, I think we represent a shape. Geographically, if I had to give it a name, it would be like a delta, where the waters of change have become sluggish as they approach, the material end of what is realized change in India. So that's why we will see that we can build any number of new roads, but the roads will get potholes within a year. That grammar of how we work doesn't change. Outwardly change. So India, in a sense, loves the idea of progress, but in a sense is very comfortable with the idea of fundamental change.
So Ghazala, do you think there's a shape of India? Should there be shapes of India? You wrote a book called Hindi Heartland. Many people would believe that is the shape of India. So what is your view of?
As a book you mentioned, the Hindi Heartland, it's just one shape of India. And India, I think, has multiple shapes, and not only because of the diversity of the people, diversity of the geography, of languages, of religions, culture, food, everything. Beyond that, the biggest diversity, I think, in India has been this willingness of all these diverse communities and groups of people to pull together for a larger goal, larger interest, all the while preserving that diversity. Now, the challenge that we are facing today is a greater thrust towards uniformity, where these multiple shapes are being battered into one uniform shape, one uniform identity, where the diversity is looked down upon, something which probably we have inherited from the colonial powers, the British colonial power, because the British, they believed in they did not like the idea of diversity. They were not used to the idea of diversity. They had one religious text, they had one language, they had one form of governance, so everything was monolith. Here in India, everything is so diverse, even the forms of governance. You see, the constitution itself recognizes that the tribal belt should have their own form of governance. They should be governed under different rules. People have a right to their resources, and their right is not, it should not be subordinate to the government's right to the land. For instance, in tribal belts of Northeast India, the tribal have the first right to forest resources, or in Central India, for years and years, we followed the British Forest Rights of India Act. But subsequently, I think in 2012, a new Forest Act was passed, and the rights of the forest dwellers to their resources was recognized as a primary right. Anyway, the present government has tried to overturn that. So what I feel is, and when we are talking of shape of us or shapes of us, we must be conscious of the fact that when we are trying to bludgeon in with our idea of what our shape should be, or what India should be, we should not try and harass, or we should not try and further push to the margins people who have always been on the margin and are now trying to find their space, or are trying to struggle to find a little spot in the mainstream. So the conflict then is between one shape and multiple shapes, and we need to recognize that there cannot be just one shape of us.
So Shefalee, your politics of appearance, is that about fashion? Is that about shapes? What is it?
It's called Stories We Wear, and its working title was The Politics of Appearance. It's not about fashion, but even fashion is not about fashion sometimes, is what I like to say. It's often about memory, of course it is. It is about material, it's about the moment. It's always about transition. It's about keeping ahead, because you can't really keep up with fashion, its transitions. Coming to the shape of us, and we belong to different persuasions as writers. I'm a journalist by profession. I see the shape of us, and I got the idea of a metaphor when Santosh used the delta wave and sediment, and I thought I'll call it a blood pressure reading. The shape of India is a blood pressure reading between high and low, between hopes and hypocrisies, definitely anxieties. A lot of pulsation of anxieties of several kinds that then become performative. They are performative as ideas that you can take back. There are ideas that you can eat through food. There are coffees and chocolates. There is cultural nostalgia. In the realm that I report in, I find more and more craft and cultural exhibitions almost tending towards educating young people to see ये हमारा कपड़ा था, पर सिर्फ कपड़ा नहीं था, इकत ऐसे बनाई जाती है, बनारसी ये होता है. This is brocade, that was khadi. There are 4 kinds of ikats. These are the households that were associated with it. And I see the cultural prism, whether it is pride about India, but there is definitely a marker that we must think and act and dress at least as Indians, if not as other things. So I see a nostalgic underpinning in the aspirations that India, meaning I saw India at airports. It's perhaps the right day, should I call it, to speak about airports. One of the chapters in my book is called The Airport Look. It's not about celebrities, it's about looking at airports through the CISF, the Central Industrial Security Force, who do the surveillance, who safely take us or not to the planes, and what happens if there is a crime or if somebody has to be handcuffed, how does the theater of departure look from there? And my view was completely changed when I was looking through the surveillance cameras at this sea, India, departing somewhere. So the shape of us as a blood pressure monitor in the post-COVID seismic wave, in my reporting, comes out as anxious, as restless, as insistent on being Indian, in finding an exploration that is global, but it's an inward, outward turning, it's an octopus that I'm really fascinated by.
So maybe I'll come, you kick us off. What shapes us? Is it language? Is it religion? Is it, you first. There are many ways to think about shape, right? And what do you think matters more? Language, food, songs, music, or religion, caste, class, or what shapes us? And what should be when you think about shape, which markers matter more?
I think our experiences are the biggest determinant of how we turn out or what shape we take. Because we all could be eating the same food, but the experience of eating that food could be different. We could be wearing similar kind of clothes. We could all be wearing saris, but the experience of wearing that would be different from each of us. So I think how you experience a particular thing in your life, whether it's your music or culture or politics or the social hierarchies or your position in the society, all of that shapes you, all of that determines how you react to these forces. A lot of people have asked me in the past that you do not, why don't you try and push your ideas out, and if you have a different opinion, why don't you try and argue it out and try and convince the other person, bring that person over to your point of view. And my answer has always been that my opinion, even if I'm hugely opinionated, my opinion are based on what my experience is. If I have experienced something and given my frame of mind at that particular point, that formed my opinion. But that other person may have had the same experience, but had experienced it in a different format, different way. So that person, why should I impose my opinions on that person? Let that person form his own opinion, because that then determines what kind of a person he or she turns out to be. So I don't think we should define ourselves by our eating habits, by our clothes, by the language we speak, by our culture, or even geography, where we come from.
But can we escape religion and caste?
I did not deliberately want to touch upon religion and caste for the simple reason that today the most divisive factors in India are religion and caste.
Oh, they weren't in the past?
No, they were in the past in a different way, and the reason today why the religion and caste have become much more divisive is because a new shape of India is being cast using religion and caste as markers. Whether it is your politics, whether it is your law. From my perspective, I look at it in three ways. One is the law making. So the law making is now also shaped by religion and caste, because you have very differential sorts of laws being made. For instance, a North Indian state like Uttarakhand has passed a uniform civil code. Now, a state doesn't have the right to pass a uniform civil code. That's the responsibility of the center, but the state has done that. The purpose of that was, as the Uttarakhand government said, was because of the threat of love jihad. Now, everybody knows there is no such thing as love jihad. The government of India, the Ministry of Home Affairs, is on record saying that we are not aware of what love jihad is. So we know there is nothing called love jihad. I mean, there is no threat of love jihad in India, but using that as a threat, the government of Uttarakhand passed Uniform Civil Code. So you, at the level of lawmaking, you're using religion. Then law enforcement level. See, if there was an incident which the government of India refuses to call a terrorist attack in Delhi last month outside Red Fort, and it continues to call it an incident. So immediately after this incident, about 12 people were rounded up, taken and names were released in the press. Everybody was now conjuring up stories of a larger sleeper cell being discovered, all the doctors now being suspect, doctors of a particular religion being suspect. All, last week, of these 12 people, 6 have been released by the police because they were only held up, they were not arrested, they were only detained for questioning. There are no charges against them. But this has not come out in the media.
Okay.
So at the level of law enforcement, again, religion and caste plays a role. You see how the law enforcement agencies behave when it's a person of a particular caste or non-caste. And then at the social level, at the level of the society, how we behave, how we conduct ourselves. Once again, religion and caste, which has always been a problem, but now it is driven further by a larger project, which, as I said in my earlier response, of battering India into one shape. So it is driven by this idea that everybody has to conform to a particular form of national identity, and that is how the social, our public sphere is getting transformed.
So Santosh, would you're sort of looking at Middle India from inside is what you said, right? Now, in your mind, is the shape of us shifting to music and language and food and clothes, or is it, I mean, does religion, caste, class matter less in India than it did in 1947 today?
Well, in a lived sense, I think religion continues to be as important. It is shaping us in ways that are, like I said, the invisible ways that in which it shapes us. And I would agree with what Ghazala said about the conscious ways in which religion is being used. I think it certainly cannot be ignored. To argue in India today that somehow other factors have become more important and religion has kind of receded in the background, has become background, a background hum, I think would be delusional. I think it would be delusional to argue that. I think very clearly there is an attempt for religion to be center stage, to frame so many political questions through the lens of religion. So religion certainly occupies center stage. That being said, if you were to say what are the forces that shape us, I would say there are two kinds of forces that are in kind of negotiation, sometimes in battle. One is this inherent sense of identity. What is identity rooted in? And I think most people in India have this sense of identity which is sometimes articulated, sometimes not. It reminds me of this pretty shitty film called The Party. Years ago, Peter Sellers plays this supposedly Indian character called Dhundi V. Bakshi. And there is a dialogue in that film where someone, some Western guy asks him, "Who do you think you are?" And his reply is, "In India, we don't think, we know who we are." And I think there is that sort of an inherent sense of our surnames are like social GPSs, right? Everybody is somebody, right? Everybody is somebody, even if you're marginalized. So there is that sense of identity, rooted in religion, rooted strongly in caste. That meets the forces of today, which is prominent among them is technology. Technology has the power of influencing us without seeming to. It works because it apparently lacks cultural content, right? So therefore, for instance, the mobile phone gives everybody an identity. Everybody is somebody. The mobile phone is communicating in 1,000 different ways that the individual is important. You are important. You matter. We take thousands of decisions in a day. Flipping something, liking something, rejecting something. That is a personal connection we have with the universe. The mobile phone tells us, that's the reason why we look at the selfie and the ease with which we take selfies. When we go to a monument and we take a selfie, we are the monument. The Taj Mahal is the prop, right? We stand in front of the Taj Mahal. We are actually celebrating ourselves, right? So that is a fun. It's like the touch screen. I would say as a metaphor for today's time, where anything you touch must respond. There is the sense that everything must be responsive to me. So at one level, what we are seeing,
That's just narcissism, right?
that is not just narcissism. That is the consequence of a certain technological form. If the technological form, the algorithm keeps telling us that you are important, it keeps recreating the world in our likeness, then the inevitable consequence of that is a certain narcissism. So rather than look at it through a pejorative lens, I would see that as the natural consequence of a certain technological form. So to my mind, these are the forces. So at one level, which is I find fascinating, deeply sort of forces that are taking us back to the past, working with forces that are propelling us to the future. And in between, we find ourselves, with a sort of vertigo, unable to decide where we should actually land. I think that is the kind of debate that is playing out in our lives today.
So Shefalee, you had this insight that politicians want to dress like the past and voters want to dress like the future. Why do you think that is, and what does that sort of indicate? Are they out of touch? Politicians are usually perfectly oiled weather vanes, right? They don't usually try and do stuff that they don't pick up. So are they out of touch, or what's going on here?
Well, in this chapter, I call wearing politics, both pun intended.
Are politicians better dressed than the past?
They better dressed than in the past? Certainly. They are better styled, they are better matched, they are better mismatched, they are more misguided in terms of clothes than they were. They try to attain identity through the few Indian markers available, which is scarf. So a whole lot of BJP workers will wear orange scarves with lotuses on them. They are risk averse is what I think. Rahul Gandhi for the white t-shirt. I'm not a fan of the politics of Rahul Gandhi or necessarily a Prime Minister of India, but on the one hand is a man who uses...
You vote Nota? You have to pick.
Stagecraft and statecraft is Mr. Modi's biggest win. He uses clothing as stagecraft and statecraft, and nobody does like him, including a peacock in his peacock feather in one of his headgear, the Northeast gamcha, and then Desi oon ki pagdi. I mean, you can't compete. There'll be a Narendra Modi costume museum, I'm hoping. But a majority of the politicians dress in a traditional, almost ethnic, of the past way while consciously styling themselves, then strategically deny that game. Why do they deny that game? When people like me, who they assume are fashion journalists and don't know better than the latest trend in the market, they refuse interviews because they are convinced that we can only ask frivolous questions, or committing to the fact that they can be fashionized is about losing gravitas in governance. So a majority of people are in every electorate region know that politicians possess Rolex watches and the best cars, and they go for dinners with their friends when they are dressed in anything else. But when they meet people who are voting for them, they'll be in saris, kurta pajamas, stoles, shawls, and bundis of 100 kinds, which means that they don't trust the electorate while saying India is shining. Railway station is shining, airports are shining. You can be different kinds of communities today to pick up the shape of us. We are vegans, we are animal activists, we are influencers, we drink matcha, we are suffering from toxic positivity. Then there are people who are fit and so must run, and everybody must be fine. It's all well, all is well. There's a burden of positivity. In this milieu, the politician says, I will still dress in the kurta pajama. I am not sure how you will judge me if I come wearing a long dress, if not to the parliament, then maybe to a handloom fair. So I find a kind of a rigid trapping of the politician's image in the India of the past while speaking of the India of the future. And it's a compelling conflict and contradiction.
Okay. So we agreed to have more sort of light than heat on the panel. So I'd like you to respond to me. I think India is getting better. The shape of India is getting better. I think that I disagree with Iqbal, who used to say we should weigh people, not count them. Iqbal once said कि जमहूरियत एक तर्ज है कीमत है जिसमें लोगों को तोलना चाहिए, गिना नहीं चाहिए. He used to think educated people should get more votes, and And there's this nostalgia about India, which I think is amnesia. I don't think there was a golden age for India in religion, in caste, in fashion. I don't think there was ever a golden age. So, isn't this just outgoing elite cribbing about the incoming elite? Isn't this massifying democracy? I mean, because it seems to be this, the more negative you are about India, the more people will clap for you. But my question to you is, my view is India is getting better. I think we're deepening democracy. Voices which were not heard in the past will manifest themselves in not always articulate English, well-dressed ways, but they are being heard now. So it's usually the, incoming elite will always sort of make the outgoing elite uncomfortable. Is that what's going on? How do you want to respond to me, all three of you? Because I want to open up to questions after that. If you have questions, otherwise I can continue chatting.
No, I mean, it is
India
true.
getting better or worse?
India is getting better in some ways and much worse in others. Much worse. So I would want to make that point. And in fact, on the
So
contrary,
let's focus on which way is getting better.
okay, let me tell you which way. No, certainly, you look at everyday facilities that we have of all kinds. I think ease of life is much better. In a variety of ways, whether it is transportation, whether it is in terms of the service economy, whether it is in terms of course, e-commerce and the rest of it, UPI, as we are always talk about that. There is inclusion. I think there is more greater financial inclusion that has taken place. So there are several ways in which where it is not and where it is getting considered. And to argue India democracy is deepening, I think I would completely disagree with that. And I would completely disagree with that because there was a time, if we go back 20 years, when there was this big shift and representativeness of Indian democracy deepened, for sure. But I think what we are seeing now is a step-by-step dismantling of institutions. And to be blind to that, I think is amazing. For anybody to be blind to the fact that today, that the election commission today is compromised, has questions. You may not agree with everything that is being laid at its doorstep, but to not acknowledge that there are questions is delusional, right? To not acknowledge that the judiciary today seems to become much more timid, to not acknowledge that the media is today...
Timid than in the past?
Yes, more timid than the past, to not acknowledge the fact, not that it was perfect. I'm not making the case that things were perfect. I'm not nostalgic about the past. India was terrible in other ways in the past. So I'm not nostalgic about a golden past. But I certainly will not agree. And look at media today. I mean, how...
Media was good in the past when you were there.
Much better than this. Don't you think there was another, don't you think that at least... That is not to say media was not slanted. But there is a difference between slant in media, but there being journalists and as against what we have today.
Okay, let's ask Shefalee. How do you want to answer the question?
I'm going to answer your question through two conflicting cases. One is of...
And overweight, how India is getting better.
Better. First, better. So, a story I have written called Bareilly Ki Barfi talks about the rise of the bad girl in OTT and in cinema, and its ripple and parallel effect in real life amongst girls who want to be bad girls. By bad, it's not like they're criminals, but they cannot be bothered if they are not seen as submissive, Sati Savitri, and the girls of the past, the sanskari girls of the past. The rise of the badass girl, I could trace in domestic workers, in Adivasi rappers. There is a ripple coming from the Federation of Women Wrestlers of India, and there is a female photographer who says, "Yahan dekho, 4 thappad lagegi tumhe agar meri cheez le gaye to." Is this better? There is a loosening, there is an elasticity from a gendered idea. I would place it as India, better is a small word, but that feminism, which is not cast as feminism, really attracts me, and I could trace a full storyline of girls. It's not a string of Christmas lights ke sabhi ladkiyan buri hain aur sabhi kali hain ya sabhi choti hain and so they are good. But there is something coming out which I call the rising, and I saw the rising in several forms. Now let me talk to the other part of, is India worse than it ever was today? My entire book, Stories We Wear, is deliberately and strategically cast on looking at caste class issues in every chapter. Whether it is how a burns victim gets treated in a government hospital to how a manual scavenger is cremated. As Bezwara Wilson, the founder of Safai Karamchari Andolan, a Magsaysay award winner, says, in this day and age when manual scavenging is outlawed, there are men dying of cleaning our gutters. Can we call India better?
Okay. Your view? I mean, I just met Santosh 5 minutes ago and he already called me delusional, so what would you like?
Okay. I think clearly what Santosh has said, that India is better in many ways in terms of ease of living, in terms of inclusive financial inclusion and all that. I agree with all of that to a large extent. But I think India is worse in many ways, and that far outweighs the good. And the reason I'm saying that is because you look at the kind of citizenry that we are now raising. Our academic institutions are now devoted towards skilling India, raising a workforce, turning students not into learners of knowledge, but into skilled manpower, which can do work. The consequence of this is that their engagement or their stakes in the rise of India as an inclusive, diverse, multicultural, multi-ethnic nation is much less. This group or this proportion of population which is skilled labor, despite all the university degrees, is the first one to look for career opportunities outside the country because their stakes in the country, within the country, are much less now. The idealism which we now disparage as, say, oh, Nehruvian idealism, maybe there was something to that idealism which kept people bound to this land for all these years, despite all the problems. I am nostalgic even because of received wisdom that I have seen in my family, extended family, amongst their circle of friends, my parents' circle of friends. You're talking of media, was media better earlier? You just look at I'll give an example of one prime minister's tenure, which is Rajiv Gandhi. You see the media there. The media actually, it was nothing but the media which determined that Rajiv Gandhi did not get a second term. All his mistakes stuck not only to him, whether it was opening the gates of Babri Masjid, whether it was overturning the verdict on Shah Bano case, whether it was Bofors, nothing has ever been proven, nothing has ever come out of it. None of these allegations, Rajiv Gandhi was able to wash them down, neither the Congress party. 1984 violence, massacre of Sikhs in Delhi and other parts of North India. Because the media ensured that the Congress also could not wash down these crimes. But you see the media today, not a single allegation sticks to the present government, whether it is Rafale deal, whether it's crony capitalism, whether it's demonetization, whether it's mismanagement of COVID, whether it's overnight announcement of a lockdown. Not a single allegation sticks. It doesn't stick because the media ensures that it should not stick. Every day, the media ensures that we talk of something which is of no consequence to the larger interest of the country. But it is of consequence to, that flimsy, air-headed idea of rising India, India on the march. We started with Vikas, then we moved to Achhe Din Aayenge. Sorry, we started with Achhe Din, then we moved to Vikas. Now we are talking about, I don't know what Bharat, Viksit Bharat. And though we are moving to Viksit Bharat, Vikas has still not been born.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Yeah, and please make it questions, don't make it comments. You write a book and be as smart as my panelists and give your name to BNL. Just a short question, there are many hands up, so we don't have that much time.
Yeah, so my question is to Madam Ghazala Wahab. You said that you don't try to convince people who don't agree with you because they have their own experiences, right? But isn't there an is-ought fallacy that, a lot of the times these experiences are not shaped by their own experiences, but these are propaganda which is mass amplified and propagandized. And a lot of people's opinion gets shaped without their even knowing through WhatsApp universities and some such things. So,
What's your question, sir?
yeah, so should we keep communicating with the people which are not like-minded, or should we just cut them off?
Actually, it's a very good question, and I'll tell you why I think it's a good question. We all have questions about the smallest thing that is happening in our lives. This is where technology comes in handy. You have AI today, you have Google, you had Google in the past. Just type your question on Google, AI enable it or do not do AI enable it, you'll have the answer.
AI is not biased?
It is, but it gives you a lot of references. Then you can open those references and you see what, so you'll get the information. You'll probably get two sides of the information. So why do you have to rely on WhatsApp University? Why do you have to rely on what I am telling you? Do your own search.
Yes, sir. In one mic there.
Hello.
Okay, you go first, and then the gentleman back goes.
Good afternoon. My name is Prasad. This platform, literally platform, says the shape of us. You know that there are shapes of us, but all other bodies, government, bureaucracy, whatever, etc., and knows that there are shapes of us.
What's your question, sir?
Question
No, I'd
will
like
follow.
you to. There are 5 hands behind.
No, it will follow. There are the shapes of us, which they are trying to make it as shape of us. Who is correct?
I didn't understand the question, but go ahead.
So your question is that who is turning shapes into shape? Okay, the government, because nothing is more powerful in this country than the government.
Yes, sir. In the back. You've got the mic,
Yeah.
yes.
So my question is to the panel itself. So it's a very generic question. Do you think the Indian audience has turned into a passive audience? We have talked about how many ways that India is much worse off than in the past and how it far outweighs that. But then why are we not doing anything about that? That's my question.
I think it is generally true that I think what again I would say that what technology has enabled is the fact that we can participate without any skin in the game. So it is possible for us to be very vocal we can all be activists without acting. So I think that is a form of passivity that we see today, that of actually being able to, even if you reject something, even if you're angry, your way of showing it is symbolic rather than real. And I think we are not putting any skin in the game in terms of not liking something or showing a dislike for it.
Yes, sir. This is in front first. There's nobody in the back. I don't see any hands in the back. Okay. Yeah, no, you go ahead, and then you, and then is there any hand in the back? Okay, red t-shirt in the back. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so as we know today, the media is highly compromised, and the internet media, I feel they're motivated first
Who's
by
B? Speak for yourself. No.
oh, first by views and then reporting true events. So how does one keep themselves constantly aware of true current affairs?
Is there some such thing as unbiased history?
There's a session at 5 p.m. on media.
Is there some such thing as unbiased history?
No. See, history, everything. Nothing is unbiased. Even journalists who are supposedly doing their job very honorably are also biased, because eventually you're driven by your ideology and what your purpose of doing journalism. So everybody is biased. Even when I write an article as a journalist, I know where my biases are, and I try and be objective only in reporting of facts. But when I am contextualizing the facts, I am biased. My bias shows in my writing, as it would show in my answers here, what my bias is. So everybody is biased. You decide which bias suits you better, as long as the facts remain sacrosanct.
Isn't the biggest belief that I'm not biased? Isn't the biggest bias the belief that I'm
I
not
don't
biased?
have that belief at all. And I think, answering your question as well, in this day and age of sponsorships, there is no media without events. There is no media without IPs. There is no media without junkets, paid tours, gifts. So what is bias? You have to decide whether it is political journalism, sports journalism, business journalism, fashion journalism. There are all kinds of sponsorships in the mix which mandate a certain kind of audience, certain kind of coverage, a certain kind of cast on the coverage, and how should it glow, which celebrity should come. What are we talking of not being biased? We are in the most biased epoch of the media that India has ever seen.
Well, it's quite an old rule that the golden rule is that the people with the gold rule, so it's not new.
Yeah.
But go ahead, sir.
It's so out there.
Last question,
Hi.
if you have a quick one.
Yes, my
No,
question
I'm
is
sorry,
to
we're
Mr.
out of time. He's already here.
My
Go
question is to Mr. Sabharwal. In a recent interview,
I'm moderator, I'm not answering questions, so give the mic to somebody else.
Yeah, so my question was just launching
Sorry.
the schemes before the elections like Ladli Behna or something like this. And however, our constitution doesn't allow launching big schemes in the interim budget. Isn't it a contradictory?
Santosh, you have written on this.
No, it is. I mean, it is. I think this is. I would say that the idea of welfare schemes to win elections is not a new idea, and it has been violated by every political party since the beginning of time. I just feel that here there is hypocrisy because if you talk about Revdi on the one hand and then do it yourself, it is hypocrisy. But it's not new.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Hopefully we can agree there are multiple shapes of India. The biggest bias is no bias, and India is getting better. But